The moment the ribbon came off the envelope, I knew exactly where I stood. We were in the backyard of my parents' house. Well, technically their third house now, since they started flipping properties in the suburbs for fun. And it was supposed to be a celebration. White tents, folding chairs, a table piled with catering trays and congratulatory balloons. My younger brother, Aaron, stood in the center like a politician announcing his victory. Everyone clapped when Mom handed him the navy envelope tied with gold twine. "To our graduates," she said, beaming. "We thought this might help with your next chapter." He pulled the ribbon, slid out the folder, and when he opened it, everyone leaned in. The title deed to a 3-bedroom home in Midtown. Just like that, he blinked. "Wait, seriously?" Dad laughed. "All yours. Taxes paid for the next 2 years." Mom raised her glass. "We believe in investing in our kids, especially the ones who make us proud." The ones who make us proud. I stood by the drink table, holding a sweating cup of lemonade and pretending my ears were just ringing from the heat. No one looked at me. I don't even think Aaron noticed I was there. He was already hugging them, murmuring, "Oh my God, thank you," like a kid with a surprise puppy. I watched the deed change hands, watched the guests around us erupt in polite envy, watched my mother's manicured nails close over her wine glass like she'd just solved something permanent. And then she turned and walked toward me. I braced, thinking maybe she would offer me a kind word, a soft moment, even a tired apology for how invisible I'd been made to feel. Instead, she pulled a folded slip of paper from her clutch and pressed it into my hand without eye contact. "The rent's going up next month," she said quietly. "You've had a grace period since Etta passed, but we can't carry that attic indefinitely." I opened the note. It wasn't a rent notice, it was a bill, for back rent, dated 4 months earlier. I blinked at it. "You're charging me for staying in Grandma's house," I said. "It's our house now," she replied. "And you're not a child anymore, Shayna." Shayna Marie Owens, 31, full-time community outreach coordinator, sometimes freelance copy editor when hours ran dry. I lived in the attic apartment above Grandma Etta's house since the day after her funeral, still wrapped in grief, surrounded by half-packed boxes and a garden she never got to finish. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I got my feet under me again. No one said it out loud, but everyone thought I had failed at adulthood. No kids, no husband, no mortgage. Just student loans, a Honda with a bad left mirror, and a reputation for being the sensitive one. "You'll need to be out by the end of the month," Mom said, calm as always. "We need to prep it for short-term rental." And with that, she turned back to the party, the people, the champagne. I stood there, bill in hand, heart thudding in a silence no one heard. Aaron didn't notice. He was taking selfies by the barbecue, the house deed tucked into his back pocket like it was a party favor. Later that night, after everyone had left and I was back in Etta's attic, I sat on the edge of the twin bed she insisted on keeping long after I outgrew it. I stared at the sagging ceiling and tried to remember if there had ever been a time when I didn't feel like this, half invisible, half burden. Grandma Etta's room still smelled like her lavender hand cream. She used to come upstairs with tea and hum through the door before entering, like I needed warning before being loved. She would have hated today. She would have hated what they did. But Etta was gone, and I was about to be gone too. That's when I looked at the tin box under the bed. The one she always told me not to throw out. The one that rattled like it was full of marbles but had never been opened. I'd ignored it for months. That night, I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was nothing but an old envelope, with my name on it. The handwriting was hers, shaky, soft, but unmistakable. "Shayna," it read. "For when they try to make you disappear." I stared at it. Then I opened it, and I realized, for the first time since Etta passed away, I wasn't alone. My full name is Shayna Marie Owens. I'm 31. I live, or lived, until they priced me out, in the attic of my late grandmother's house. I work for a nonprofit that helps women exit domestic violence situations. We write grants, coordinate rides, and hold hands when no one else will. It's not glamorous, it's never enough, but it's honest. I've never been the kind of daughter my parents wanted. I wasn't loud like Aaron, or charming like our cousin Jace, or perfectly practical like my mom's favorite intern who always smiled through her braces and got her MBA before 24. I was emotional, tired. I asked questions. I didn't look good in Easter photos. And when I stopped getting A's in college and couldn't afford to transfer after Etta got sick, they quietly let go of whatever hope they had for me. Grandma Etta was the only one who didn't. She was the only person who saw me at full volume and didn't try to turn the dial down. She'd say things like, "I trust you with the fragile things," or, "Some people build, others pose next to what others built. You're a builder." She always said it when no one else was listening. I think that's why they forgot. But I never did. The envelope inside the tin box was thicker than it looked. Inside were 2 documents. One was a letter, the other a legal-looking declaration with a notary stamp. I didn't understand right away. The letter was handwritten, dated 6 months before she passed away. My girl, if they're treating you like this, then I didn't leave fast enough. I tried to tell your mama that legacies aren't about who gets a house, they're about who remembers what the house was for. I know how they see you. I saw it happening in real time. I watched you shrink in this house, even when I asked you not to. I don't blame you. I blame them. There's something I did before I passed. I didn't tell anyone, not even your uncle. But you need to know, the foundation belongs to you now. Ask for the safety deposit box under my maiden name. Use the key from the envelope in my red Bible. Don't tell them what you're looking for. Not until you've got both feet on the ground. I trust you with the fragile things. And I read it 3 times before I could process it. Then I started crying. Not the dramatic, cinematic crying they use in movies to cue emotional breakthrough. No. This was quieter, body-crushing. The kind of crying where you fold into yourself and don't make a sound because something finally clicked. She knew. Etta knew. For years, maybe. She saw it. She saw the way they treated me like a backup plan, like a mouth they were too polite to call useless. She knew that while Aaron got trophies and you make us proud text messages, I got lectures about my tone, my debt, my tendency to spiral. And still, she chose me. Still, she trusted me with the fragile things. The next morning, I tore the house apart until I found it. The red leather-bound Bible she used to carry every Sunday in her purse even though she hadn't been to church in a decade. Inside, between the pages of Isaiah, was the key. Tiny, tarnished. Stamped, First Canton Trust, Box 121B. I took it with shaking hands. That week, I went to the bank. The woman at the front desk raised an eyebrow when I asked for access to a deposit box under Etta Monroe, Etta's maiden name. You're not listed as authorized, she said. I handed her the envelope and the notarized form. I am now. She went in back to speak with the manager. It took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of me sitting in a velvet chair, wondering if I'd misunderstood everything. Wondering if I was about to open a box with nothing inside, just some expired coupons or a piece of heirloom junk, and all my hopes would flatten like always. Then the woman returned and said, "Follow me, Miss Owens." The box was heavy. Inside was a bound folder of trust paperwork, thick, stamped, dated. I didn't understand most of the language, but the numbers were clear. 6 figures in an account under Etta's name, set aside for community ownership initiatives. And under that, a single USB drive, labeled Mayfield Docs. I took it home. I sat at my desk. I opened the drive. And that's when I realized, Etta didn't just leave me money, she left me power, and leverage, and receipts. The drive contains scanned letters, emails, even PDFs of correspondence between my mother and my uncle discussing adjusting Etta's will in the months before she passed. She's lucid sometimes, but not always. If she names Shayna, we'll lose control of the foundation. We can probably have her signature questioned if needed. I stared at the emails, at my mother's words, at the casual cruelty of people who had Christmas morning smiles and always said love you. At the end of phone calls. They'd planned to erase me, legally, financially, and morally. But Etta beat them to it. She filed the real trust documents under her maiden name. She funded the account in advance, and she gave me every tool I'd need to prove it was valid. I spent that whole night cross-referencing the paperwork with what I knew. The Mayfield Foundation, a small community center she helped co-found, was part of her legacy. And apparently, in her final months, she moved its entire board under private control. She placed it in trust, under my name. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the screen, eyes dry, heart pounding like something was trying to crawl out of my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel buried. I felt like I'd been planted. And now, I was ready to grow. I didn't tell anyone what I found. Not yet. I walked around with that USB drive tucked in the lining of my purse, like it was a live wire. In a way, it was. Everything inside it hummed with the quiet voltage of justice delayed, but not denied. I spent the next 2 weeks reading, researching, printing things out, and circling them. I created spreadsheets I never showed anyone. I called Dolores Ramirez, the attorney who'd once helped a woman from our shelter keep custody of her kids when her ex showed up with a forged will and a smirk. She remembered me. "You're the one with the boots and the bad coffee," she said. I told her I had something real, something big. I brought her the folder and the drive. She read in silence. Her face didn't change. Not until she saw my mother's name in one of the emails. "Jesus," she muttered. They were going to legally incapacitate her. I nodded. They tried, but Etta filed this first. Dolores leaned back. You're not just a beneficiary, you're the trustee. You have full discretion. I knew what that meant. I'd Googled enough trust law to fill a textbook. So what now, I asked. How do I claim it? She smiled, slow and sharp. You don't. You don't claim anything. She tapped the drive. You activate. The Mayfield Foundation was supposed to be small. A legacy project Etta helped fund after retiring from teaching, part food pantry, part tutoring center, part church basement without the sermons. It had barely scraped by after her passing away. My uncle said it was no longer viable, and the family floated a plan to convert the lot into a mixed-use development. I knew what that meant. Gentrification in a bow tie. But the trust paperwork proved something different. Etta had funded it herself, fully, and transferred the land under a private LLC, with me as sole managing member. It was right there, filed with the county, signed, witnessed, uncontested. I had let them call me a burden while I technically owned the one thing they still needed to cash in on. So I paid the tax balance. I hired a forensic accountant Dolores recommended. And then, I called a board meeting. The family had no idea what was coming. Mom texted me that Sunday afternoon. It was 2 days before our family finance night. Something she invented to make household decisions feel collaborative while ultimately maintaining total control. Don't forget Tuesday, 6 p.m. sharp. We'll discuss the attic plus Aaron's move-in timeline. She didn't ask if I was free. She didn't mention the fact that I hadn't responded to the rent bill. She just assumed I'd show up quietly like I always had. I typed a single word back, attending. But I also copied Dolores on the reply. Tuesday came fast. I wore gray slacks and a black top, simple, firm, nothing frilly. I arrived 10 minutes early with my own folder. Aaron answered the door with a protein shake in one hand, and the other already scrolling on his phone. He barely looked at me. They're in the den. Mom sat with a spreadsheet in front of her and a small stack of envelopes. Dad was sipping tea, pretending he wasn't nervous. Okay, Mom said as I walked in. Let's keep this short. Aaron's moving into the attic next month, just for a while, so we need to know your plan. My plan? I said. Well, she continued, flipping pages, since Etta's estate is settled and we need to list the property, we were hoping you'd be flexible on the timeline. You've had plenty of runway. Runway. That word landed like a slap. I've lived there since the day after her funeral, I said. Yes, she replied. Rent-free, I might add. I opened my folder. You want to talk about who paid for what? I asked. Let's. I slid a document across the table. Etta's trust declaration, stamped, notarized, signed. Mom blinked. What's this? That, Dolores said as she stepped into the room, is a fully executed trust assigning Shayna both financial and legal authority over the Mayfield Foundation and its assets, including the property in question. My mother's face drained of color. Excuse me? Dad said, already reaching for the paper. I'm the managing trustee, I said. The land belongs to the foundation. The foundation belongs to me. Aaron's smoothie paused mid-sip. No one told us, Mom started. Because she didn't have to, Dolores cut in. Your mother filed this trust independently. You can contest it, but I should warn you, we've already pre-filed the probate confirmation. Dad exhaled through his nose. Aaron muttered, Wait, what foundation? Mom stood. This is ridiculous. You're not equipped to manage this. Shayna, you're not. What? I said. Professional? Educated? Capable? She looked at me, mouth half open. I picked up the last page, the scanned email with her signature under the subject line, We may need to limit her access legally. I laid it on the table. The silence that followed wasn't just shock, it was exposure. You were going to erase me, I said softly. And now you're mad I showed up with the receipts. Dad cleared his throat. We didn't mean. Yes, you did, I snapped. You meant every word. You called me unstable. You mocked my job. You gave Aaron a house and handed me a bill in the same breath. And you thought I'd just swallow it. Dolores packed the documents back into the folder. We're not here to debate the past, she said. We're here to notify you that the property is no longer available for conversion, sale, or rental. Per the trust conditions, it is to be used for community service only. Shayna will be moving out of the attic once the renovations are complete, on her terms. I looked at Mom. This is mine now. Her mouth pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Dad just stared at the folder. Aaron mumbled something under his breath and left the room. I stood, walked to the door, and paused. I'm not a guest in this family, I said. And I'm not the burden you decided I was. I left without slamming the door. That would have been for them. And this? This was finally for me. The hardest part of taking control wasn't the documents, or the lawyers, or the meetings. It was the silence after. Once the confrontation ended, once I showed them the trust, the ownership papers, and the emails with their names on them, there was no yelling, no crying, no fireworks. There was just the awful echoing quiet of people realizing the leverage was no longer theirs. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be invited into the room. I walked in on my own, and when I left, I took the floor with me. I moved out of the attic within the month, not because they asked me to, but because I no longer needed to explain why I stayed. The foundation offered me an office above the old food pantry space, and I took it. The room was small, barely ventilated, but it overlooked the garden Etta used to tend when her knees were still strong. It felt like permission. I started the process of reopening the building, quietly, legally, intentionally. My first step was filing a motion to confirm the trust's ownership. Dolores handled the paperwork, looping in a compliance officer who used to work for the state auditor. We knew the Bell family, Mom's maiden name, would push back eventually, so we preempted it. Sent certified notices to every relative with even a vague financial tie to Etta's estate. They didn't reply. But they didn't challenge either. That was confirmation enough. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I got a letter in the mail from my mother. It wasn't handwritten, it wasn't even personally signed. Just a typed note on stationery from my father's accounting firm. Shayna, we're disappointed you felt the need to go around the family. This could have been handled privately and with grace. Please let us know if you plan to pursue media involvement. We'd like to avoid unnecessary exposure for all parties involved. Marcia and Ronald Owens. I laughed when I read it, not because it was funny, but because it proved what I'd always suspected. Their idea of grace had always been silence. I didn't respond. Instead, I emailed our local paper, not to gossip, not to humiliate, but to tell the story. About Etta, about her vision for the foundation, about the trust. I left myself out of it mostly, just a direct descendant overseeing the revival. They ran it in the Sunday edition. The headline read, Mayfield Foundation reopens under quiet stewardship. A granddaughter's promise. Underneath was a photo of the building with the red door newly repainted, Etta's original mural sketch framed in the window. That's when the phone started ringing. Not from family. From people in the neighborhood. Mrs. Callahan called first, Etta's old church friend who used to sneak homemade biscuits into the pantry. Then Dante from the youth boxing club who hadn't stepped foot in Mayfield since he was 16. Then 2 retired teachers, a local high schooler named Bree who wanted to volunteer. They weren't interested in politics or legacy battles, they wanted to help. That's when it hit me. Etta hadn't just given me power. She'd left behind trust, not the legal kind, but the kind that lives between people and purpose. I started with the repairs. New locks, windows that opened, mold remediation. I used the first draw from the trust to hire local contractors and paid every invoice on time. I bought new chairs, painted the walls, installed a bulletin board in the lobby that said simply, "This is still yours." I made a sign to hang over the entrance with Etta's handwriting, scanned from a birthday card she gave me when I turned 25. Keep your name. Make them say it soft. It became our motto. Meanwhile, Dolores helped me build a compliance trail so clean it could survive 10 audits. I knew someone in the family would try to paint me as unstable, irresponsible, emotional. So I became everything they weren't expecting. Organized, methodical, accountable. I filed monthly updates with the foundation board, even though I didn't have to. I kept receipts for every expense over $50. I sent thank you notes to volunteers. And when someone from the zoning office showed up asking about occupancy codes, I had a laminated spreadsheet ready. He looked surprised. "You're not what I expected," he said. "Neither are you," I replied. He laughed and signed off the inspection that day. The last person I expected to show up was Aaron. He knocked one Wednesday afternoon, holding a coffee cup and looking smaller than I remembered. I hadn't seen him since the night of the confrontation, when he stood in our parents' den and let Mom hand me an eviction notice while he smiled behind his smoothie. Now he looked unsure. The house deed probably didn't feel as heavy as it once did. I didn't invite him in. He handed me the coffee. "I didn't know," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "I mean, not all of it. I didn't know they were trying to cut you out. I thought that it just happened by accident," I said. "That I just didn't measure up." He looked down. "I'm sorry," he said. "I really am." I nodded once. "I don't need you to be sorry. I need you to remember." "Remember what?" "That I was always here." He nodded again, slower this time, then turned and walked away. I closed the door gently. 1 week later, the Mayfield Foundation held its reopening celebration. No balloons, no catered spreads, just a folding table of homemade snacks, speakers playing Etta's favorite Otis Redding tracks, and an open door. Over 60 people showed up. Kids, retirees, teachers, caseworkers, volunteers. One woman brought a photo of her son from when he first learned to read in our old tutoring corner. I stood by the coffee urn refilling cups and answering questions, wearing the same pendant Etta gave me when I was 12. It was shaped like a key. At the end of the night, Bree, the high schooler, hugged me. "You run this place, right?" she said. I nodded. She grinned. "You don't look like a boss, but in a good way." I smiled. I looked around, and for the first time in my life I believed it. I wasn't just taking up space. I was building it. The house my parents gave Aaron was 3 blocks away from Mayfield. I passed it every week on my way to the community garden. Neat hedges, fresh siding, a new car in the driveway. Some weekends I'd see him out front, mowing the lawn with earbuds in, like he was erasing every trace of who came before. He never waved. I didn't either. We weren't hostile. We were just finished. No explosion, just the quiet end of a lie we'd both believed too long. That one child can be loved without costing the other something. And when that lie cracked, all that was left between us was a house, a history, and a silence too wide to cross. But I didn't need him to make peace with what he'd inherited. I already had. I never did go back to my parents' house, not even when they left 3 voicemails asking to talk things out. The third one came in a week after the Mayfield relaunch event, after the local news ran a short segment on the granddaughter reviving a legacy. The segment was gentle, almost annoyingly so, but it hit a nerve. I could tell by my mother's voice in the message. "Shayna, I don't think you understand how this is being perceived. We're not villains. We made decisions based on the information we had. I wish you'd come by. Let's just recalibrate all this before it gets more complicated." She never used the word sorry. Not once. Just that same careful language she always used when trying to save face while taking none of the blame. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened Etta's red Bible and slid the letter back into its sleeve. I reread her words like a prayer. "They'll try to make you disappear. But you're not small, baby. They're just scared of your size." I kept my name on the foundation's title. I didn't turn it into a group trust or let the board restructure it. That's not what Etta intended. She didn't build Mayfield to be efficient. She built it to be specific. To say, "You belong here, and you matter whether or not anyone claps when you enter a room." So I kept it personal. Not selfishly, not for power, but because legacies can't be crowdsourced. Sometimes they have to be carried, name by name, breath by breath, until the people who forgot you remember you again. Or don't. Either way, you keep going. When the renovations were complete, I stood outside the building in the middle of a Thursday morning and stared at the new plaque. It read, "The Mayfield Foundation, in honor of Etta Monroe Owens. She trusted us with the fragile things." I whispered it to myself and felt something rise in my chest that wasn't grief or anger. It was peace. It was ownership. Not just of a building or a bank account, but of myself. The last time I saw my parents in person was the following spring. They came to one of our public forums, a panel about urban food deserts we hosted in the new garden space behind the center. I wasn't speaking. I was working the registration table, handing out clipboards and bottled water. I didn't notice them at first. They waited in line like everyone else. And when they got to the front, Mom said my name like it was a test. "Shayna." I looked up. She was in pearls again. Dad wore his blazer even though it was almost 80 degrees. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said, though she absolutely did. I nodded. "We wanted to stop by," Dad added. "We read about the new grant you got. Congratulations." There it was again, the careful compliment, the implication that now that I was acceptable, they were ready to re-enter the picture. I pointed to the list. "Sign in if you want a seat." They both blinked. "Do you have a few minutes to talk after?" Mom asked, voice tightening. "I'll be working," I said. Their smiles didn't falter, but they didn't reach their eyes. They signed in, sat down near the back, and left before the Q&A. They didn't say goodbye. I didn't watch them go. And when I locked up that night, I stood alone in the doorway with my key in my hand and whispered, "That's enough. Not for them. For me." It's been over a year since I reopened Mayfield. We're solvent, we're small, we're busy. We now have a GED prep night, a mother's circle, and a partnership with a co-op bakery that hires reentry women. Sometimes I wake up tired to the bone, sometimes I want to vanish, but then someone knocks on the center door and I remember. I'm the one holding it open. That's the legacy Etta gave me. Not just a place, not just a folder of proof. She gave me the audacity to believe I didn't need applause to be legitimate. That being named wasn't the same as being chosen. That love given quietly, steadfastly is the most powerful kind of love there is. I never got the house. I never got the ceremony, I never got the easy praise, but I got something else. I got the key. And that was enough. There are days when I still hear her in the wind. When the garden is quiet and the sun hits the mural just right, I swear I can smell her lavender hand cream and hear the slow shuffle of her feet as she carries 2 mugs of tea up the attic stairs. She never called me strong. She didn't need to, she just trusted me. And that's how I knew I was. Now, when the world tells me I'm too much, or not enough, or just wrong, I reach for the small gold key on my chain, the one I had forged from the safety deposit box key after Dolores framed the original. I touch it like a rosary, like proof. I survived their forgetting. I outlasted their disappointment. And I rebuilt the thing they tried to take from me, not with rage, but with roots. Etta once told me, you don't need their table. Just bring your own chair. Now I have a whole room. And chairs for anyone else who was told to be quiet, be grateful, be less, because the truth is, what they gave him was a house. What she gave me was a home. And I opened the door.